Back to our reading in Romans and in Romans chapter 4. Well, today I'm starting with Romans 4 and verse 13. For the promise to Abraham, or to his descendants, that he would inherit the world was not through the law, but through the righteousness that comes by faith. Okay, Abraham and his descendants. See, they were promised the world, the promise of all that would come to them in the future. That God made the promise that about, remember, there were going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of descendants. God had all of these great things planned for Abraham. They would inherit the world. Okay, it wasn't through the law that he got this. This promise came because of his righteousness. We've talked about that righteousness that comes by faith. So, verse 14, if those who are of the law are the heirs, then faith is empty. No, faith doesn't mean anything. And the promise to Abraham, nullified. Doesn't mean anything. To nullify something means it does not matter. It does not count. So, if those who are of the law are the heirs, then the promise to Abraham was empty and faith was made worthless. Okay, verse 15. Because the law produces wrath. The law is what, remember, the law is what shows us right and wrong. So thus, the law produces wrath, okay? And where there is no law, there is no transgression. We've got to have the law because the law shows us right, shows us wrong. Verse 16. This is why the promise to Abraham and to his inheritance is by faith, so that it may be according to grace. Remember, getting something we don't deserve, grace, to guarantee to all the descendants, not only to those who are of the law, but also to those who are of Abraham's faith. We share Abraham's faith. We Gentiles who have received Christ share Abraham's faith. Thus, that promise becomes ours also. He, Abraham, is the father of us all. Verse 17 says, as it is written, I have made you the father of many nations. That was the promise God made to Abraham. He is our father in God's sight, in whom Abraham believed, the God who gives life to the dead and calls things into existence that do not exist. God gives life, and he's the creator. He brings things into existence that did not exist. Verse 18, he believed, hoping against hope, so that he became the father of many nations, according to what had been spoken. So will your descendants be. Your descendants will be those inherit. Verse 19. He did not weaken in faith when he considered his own body to be already dead, since he was about 100 years old, and also the deadness of Sarah's womb. His wife had no children at this time when that promise was made, and they were old, and yet he believed the promise of God that he would have all of these descendants that would inherit the earth. Verse 20, he did not waver, we're talking about Abraham, in unbelief at God's promise, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, because he was fully convinced that God had promised, he was also able to do. The promise that God had made him, Abraham believed that God would do it, that he was able to keep that promise. Let's do one more verse. Verse 22, therefore it was credited to him for righteousness. And we'll stop there today. Abraham, the father of us all, accepted the promise that he would have descendants that would inherit the earth, not by the law, but by his faith and by grace in righteousness. Thus we receive Abraham, the father of us all. We'll continue next time in chapter 4.